Welcome back to our YouTube channel, the place where hidden treasures come to life, where history speaks through coins, and where ordinary-looking pocket change could be the key to a fortune. Today, we're diving into a story that seems too unreal to be true, a 2006 1-cent coin that turned into a $56 million legend. That's right, a single penny, usually overlooked and even discarded, became one of the most valuable coins ever known in modern history. But how did this happen? What made this 2006 1-cent piece worth more than many mansions, luxury yachts, and even some private islands? Get comfortable, because you're about to hear a tale of mystery, error, rarity, and the incredible world of high-stakes numismatics. It all started in an unassuming way, like many of the greatest stories do. Somewhere in the heart of America, in the Denver Mint facility, coins were being struck day and night, following a precise rhythm. But among the billions of coins produced in 2006, something went unexpectedly off script. One particular 1-cent coin, seemingly just another Lincoln Memorial cent, had a difference so subtle, so hidden, that it went unnoticed for years. It ended up in circulation like all others, bouncing from pocket to pocket, purchase to purchase, until one day, a sharp-eyed coin enthusiast spotted something off. The collector, a retired machinist named Edward Harris, was sorting through a handful of coins from a gas station purchase when one particular penny caught his eye. At first, it was just the shine. The color seemed unusual, not quite copper, not quite zinc, and certainly not something he could place. Intrigued, he placed it under his jeweler's loupe and began examining it closely. That's when the oddities started stacking up. The mint mark looked faint and slightly misaligned. The edge of the coin was unusually thick in one area and paper-thin in another. Even stranger, the year, 2006, appeared to have a ghosted double imprint, almost as if it had been struck twice. But it wasn't your typical double die. It was something else. Edward, a man who had spent decades in mechanical engineering, knew when something wasn't made right. He immediately sent the coin to a numismatic expert, just to be sure. What followed was a spiral of analysis, testing, scanning, and debates that ultimately shook the coin collecting world. The verdict? This was no ordinary error. This was a freak accident of historical significance. The coin had been struck on a planchet intended for an experimental alloy that was never released to the public. An alloy that had only been used in test runs for a discontinued project, believed to have been destroyed or recycled. What Edward had found was a ghost from a failed mint experiment, a coin that was never meant to exist. The metal composition was traced back to a top-secret trial involving manganese-bronze composites, which the mint was considering for a new line of environmentally friendly coinage. The results of those trials were kept quiet and the project shelved indefinitely. Yet here it was, in the palm of a retired engineer, living proof that some pieces of that trial escaped destruction. The collector community went wild. Coin forums exploded with speculation. Auction houses began sending private offers. And eventually, the legendary coin was listed at a major numismatic auction. The starting bid? A modest $100,000. But within minutes, the price soared past 7 figures. The final hammer fell at a staggering $56 million, purchased by an anonymous billionaire collector based in the United Arab Emirates, who later claimed he intended to start the most complete collection of American coinage outside of the U.S. So what makes a coin like this worth $56 million? It's not just rarity, although that plays a huge role. It's the story. The provenance. The historical anomaly. The fact that this tiny sliver of metal defied bureaucracy, escaped the melting pot, and made its way into the real world. It became a symbol of what might have been, of an alternate path in U.S. coin production. The mystery behind its creation, the secret still untold by the U.S. Mint, only deepened its allure. Some even theorized it was deliberately smuggled out by a rogue employee, a kind of numismatic whistleblower, leaving behind a clue for those willing to look deep enough. But the journey of this coin didn't end with the auction. Its discovery sparked a wave of coin hunts across America. thousands of people began checking their pocket change with renewed obsession. Social media hashtags like #pennygoldrush and #checkyourcents began trending. Local coin shops reported record visits. Even banks were flooded with requests for penny rolls. For a while, it was like the gold rush all over again, only this time, the gold was hidden in everyday change. Meanwhile, Edward Harris became a legend himself. He appeared on talk shows, documentaries, and even taught a short course at a local community college titled When Machines Make Mistakes. He never spent a dime of the money for years. He said the thrill of the find was worth more than the check. Eventually, he donated a portion of the funds to engineering scholarships and funded a mobile coin museum that toured schools across the country. His mission was simple: to inspire people to look closely, to notice the overlooked, and to remind everyone that value doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers from the palm of your hand. And now, let's rewind a bit and take a closer look at the origin of the error. Back in the early 2000s, the U.S. Mint had been under pressure from environmental groups and economic advisors to consider changing the composition of coins, particularly pennies and nickels, which cost more to produce than their face value. One proposed solution was the use of new alloys that could be struck with less energy and last longer in circulation. In 2005, a small batch of test planchets was created using a proprietary blend of manganese, copper, and zinc, a combination that created a slightly golden hue and unique density signature. These test planchets were never intended for circulation. They were used in internal test strikes, data collection, and wear simulations. The plan was to recycle them after the tests concluded. But somewhere, somehow, a handful of these blanks ended up in the production line at the Denver Mint in early 2006. Only a few coins were struck with them, perhaps just one, perhaps three, no one knows for sure. But only one has surfaced. And that coin became the stuff of legends. There's also a twist involving security footage and an internal investigation. After Edward's discovery went public, the U.S. Mint launched an inquiry into the possibility of breach. Archived camera footage from early 2006 was reviewed, revealing a strange anomaly: a forklift operator repeatedly entering a restricted area over several nights. The operator, when interviewed years later, denied knowing anything about coins or metals. The Mint concluded it was likely a coincidence, but conspiracy theorists weren't convinced. Some believe a small number of these coins were deliberately allowed to slip through, perhaps as a quiet rebellion by someone inside who felt the experimental coin deserved a second chance. In the years following the sale, replicas of the coin began appearing online. Despite the warnings, many unsuspecting buyers were fooled by fakes produced in China and Eastern Europe. These counterfeits often lacked the precise metallurgy and failed advanced testing, but some were good enough to pass initial inspection. Edward, seeing the potential for chaos, collaborated with experts to create an open-access digital archive of the coin's characteristics, weight, sound profile, die markers, edge irregularities, to help protect future collectors. Even now, the legend of the 2006 penny lives on. It's talked about at coin shows, cited in economics lectures, and even referenced in pop culture. A popular crime drama featured a storyline loosely based on it, where a stolen penny held the secret to $1 billion treasure. And every year, during National Coin Week, its story is retold to inspire new generations of collectors. What's most fascinating is how it changed public perception of coins entirely. Suddenly, pocket change wasn't just junk metal, it was potential treasure. It was history, art, mystery. People began collecting again, not just for value, but for the thrill of the unknown. The 2006 1-cent piece ignited a modern renaissance in numismatics, and Edward? He's still out there, checking change, giving talks, and encouraging others to do the same. In one of his last interviews, he said something that stuck with a lot of people: the universe is full of errors. Some of them are accidents. Others are signs. You just have to pay attention. And that's why we're here. Because you never know what story a simple coin can hold. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check your pockets. That next penny might just be history waiting to be discovered. Next 2002 coin. Welcome back to YouTube channel, where the world of rare coins and the untold stories behind them take center stage. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mind-boggling stories in numismatic history, the saga of the 2002 1-cent coin that shocked the collecting community with its staggering value of $49 million. It's a tale that goes far beyond simple coin collecting. This is about mystery, history, a mistake that turned into gold, copper, and a treasure that sat in plain sight for years before revealing its true worth. Let's start at the beginning, in a place where thousands of coins are minted daily, where every press and die is supposed to be flawless. In 2002, something happened that wasn't in any manual, wasn't on any blueprint, and definitely wasn't supposed to reach the public. But it did. A single coin slipped through the cracks. A 2002 1-cent piece, at first glance, looked like every other penny you'd find in your pocket change. Brownish red, small, light, and seemingly worthless beyond its face value. But this one coin held a secret that would take over a decade to uncover. Back in 2002, the US Mint was facing a period of technological transitions. Machines were being upgraded, digital imaging was becoming more common, and coin designs were being evaluated for future changes. Amidst this atmosphere of controlled chaos, a curious error occurred. One press, used briefly during a maintenance trial, was installed with an incorrect die. It was meant to be used for testing purposes only, stamping blank planchets for internal calibration. However, it was never shut off properly before the production line resumed. The result? A handful of coins bore a die that wasn't approved for public release. Among these was the infamous 2002 penny. But it wasn't just a die error that made it special. The planchet, the blank metal disc used to make coins, was also different. Normally, US pennies after 1982 were made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. But this particular coin was struck on a pure copper planchet, something not used in regular circulation for 2 decades. Experts would later theorize that a batch of old copper planchets from the early 1980s or even earlier had been mistakenly fed into the system. Or perhaps it was deliberate, a rogue action by a mint employee with a passion for numismatic oddities. The truth is, no one knows for sure. For years, this penny sat unnoticed. It went from hand to hand, used to buy gum, dropped in vending machines, tossed into a piggy bank, maybe even lost under a couch. But in 2015, a collector at a flea market in Oregon spotted it in a jar of assorted coins marked 5 for $1. Something about its color caught his eye. It was just a bit too rich, too red, too heavy in the hand. He bought it along with 4 others, thinking at worst he'd overpaid by 80 cents. He didn't know he'd just secured one of the rarest modern coins in US history. The collector, a retired machinist named Harold Denton, had a habit of weighing old coins for fun. Back at home, he dropped the 2002 penny onto his scale and noticed it was heavier than any other post-1982 coin he'd come across. That led him to test it further, using an acid test to confirm the metal content. To his astonishment, it appeared to be nearly pure copper. He didn't trust the test, so he sent it off to a metallurgist friend of his, who confirmed the same result. It was real copper. Not just coated. The whole coin was copper through and through. Denton then brought it to a coin dealer in Portland. The dealer was skeptical until he saw the weight, the strike details, and the year. This wasn't any ordinary penny. It was in almost perfect condition, with only a few minor abrasions. He suggested they send it to a professional grading service. The coin was submitted to the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, where it was authenticated, graded MS69, and verified as being struck on a 95% copper planchet that changed everything. Word spread quickly through the numismatic community. A pure copper 2002 penny, officially graded, authenticated, and in mint condition? That was unheard of. Collectors speculated on how it could have happened. Some thought it was a mule coin, an accidental mix of dies and planchets. Others believed it could be an intentional strike, done quietly by someone with access to the mint's equipment. Whatever the case, its rarity was undeniable. Auction houses began calling. Denton, initially hesitant, was eventually persuaded to let the coin go to auction. He agreed, provided it was done anonymously and with full documentation to protect the chain of custody. The auction took place in early 2016, with bidding starting at $100,000. Within minutes, the price jumped into the millions. When the hammer finally came down, the final sale price stood at an astronomical $49 million. The buyer remained anonymous, represented by a team of agents known for acquiring historical rarities for private collectors and museums. That sale sent shockwaves through the coin collecting world. How could a modern penny, less than 2 decades old, be worth more than most ancient coins, rare gold pieces, and even some historic documents? The answer lay in its story, one of improbable survival, perfect timing, a confluence of errors, and sheer luck. It was a one-of-a-kind item, a unicorn in the world of numismatics. And collectors understood that the $49 million 2002 penny became an icon. Magazine covers, numismatic blogs, and even mainstream news outlets ran features about it. For months, it dominated conversations at coin shows and conventions. Denton, who had stayed mostly in the shadows, did one interview with a small collector's journal where he simply said, "I always knew pennies could be more than just change. I just never thought one would change my life." In the years since, the story has inspired countless treasure hunters and hobbyists to dig through their jars of loose change. While no other 2002 copper penny of this nature has surfaced, its legend lives on. Some believe others might exist, still unnoticed in a jar or forgotten in a drawer. Others think it was a truly singular error, never to be repeated. The mystery only adds to its allure, but the coin's story doesn't end with the sale. Its new owner, known only through a code name used by private collections, decided not to hide the coin away forever. In 2020, he allowed it to be displayed under intense security at a major international numismatic exhibition in Geneva. The exhibit featured some of the world's rarest coins, and the 2002 penny held its own against ancient Roman aurei, medieval gold florins, and even a 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle. Of visitors lined up to see it. Some shook their heads in disbelief. A penny? Worth more than a Picasso? But those who understood the world of rare coins knew the truth. This wasn't just a coin. It was a fluke of history, a symbol of the unexpected value that can lie in the most ordinary of objects. One of the more fascinating developments after the exhibit was the number of former mint employees who came forward with theories. Some suggested that copper planchets may have been deliberately reintroduced during equipment testing. Others thought it might have been a leftover blank from a proof set that got mixed in. A few even hinted at the possibility of a rogue employee creating a secret series, much like the infamous 1933 double eagles. But no solid evidence has ever been found to support any of these claims. The U.S. Mint has neither confirmed nor denied the existence of other similar coins, stating only that all coin production follows strict protocols and any deviation is subject to investigation. To this day, numismatists debate the origins of the coin. It's been studied under microscopes, subjected to X-ray fluorescence analysis, 3D laser imaging, and digital reconstruction. All tests confirm the same: it's a 2002 penny, made of nearly pure copper, struck with official dies, and perfectly legal tender, though no one in their right mind would spend it. What makes the story even more remarkable is how ordinary the coin looks. It doesn't scream rarity. It doesn't glow. It doesn't have any markings to set it apart unless you know what to look for. Its beauty is in its deception. A wolf in penny's clothing, if you will. There's something poetic about that. In a world obsessed with shiny, flashy, and extravagant things, this story reminds us that the most valuable treasures can sometimes be hiding in the plainest forms. That change rattling in your cup holder might hold more value than you ever imagined. It invites a certain kind of curiosity, a willingness to look closer, to dig deeper, and to question the everyday. The legacy of the 2002 $49 million penny continues to inspire. New collectors are born every year, driven by tales like this one. Coin clubs have used the story as a teaching moment about errors, anomalies, and the importance of attention to detail. It's become a case study in probability, examined by statisticians and economists for how something so low in likelihood became real, and perhaps most profoundly, it's a testament to the thrill of the hunt. Because whether it's in the attic, under the floorboards, or in a forgotten coffee can, that next once-in-a-lifetime coin might just be waiting to be found. Let us know what rare coin stories you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest stories. We'll see you in the next video. Next 1998D, the place where we uncover the unbelievable tales hidden in your pocket change and bring to light stories that have stunned historians, collectors, and treasure hunters across the globe. Today, we dive into a story that sounds like it belongs in a Hollywood movie script, not in the drawers of forgotten change jars or the creases of an old wallet. We're going deep into the astonishing case of the 1998 D1 coin that turned the world of numismatics on its head, stunning the financial elite and historians alike when it sold for a jaw-dropping $43 million. Now, before you roll your eyes at what sounds like an exaggeration, let's explore exactly what makes this single penny from Denver Mint, produced during a year not particularly known for coin errors or historic change, command such a dizzying figure. After all, 1998 wasn't a particularly volatile year for coin production. No sweeping legislation disrupted minting practices. No historical redesigns were in motion. At least, not on the surface. But that's the beauty of this mystery. Sometimes the most valuable things hide in the mundane, the overlooked, and the routine. Sometimes the story behind a coin is what writes its own value into the books of history. Our story begins in a dusty box at the bottom of an estate sale in Pueblo, Colorado. A local antique dealer, Cheryl Mitchell, was combing through old jewelry, costume beads, postcards, and vintage silverware when she came across a small velvet pouch with no label. Inside, a collection of average-looking coins sat in silence. Most were tarnished, unremarkable pieces dating from the 1970s through the early 2000s. But one stood out, not because of its shine or color, but because of how oddly off-centered the print appeared. Cheryl, being the daughter of a lifelong coin collector, had seen minor minting anomalies before. She recognized the odd strike immediately. It wasn't quite misaligned, but it wasn't perfect either. Something about the face of Abraham Lincoln seemed ever so slightly warped, not damaged, not defaced, just different. Intrigued, Cheryl set the coin aside, expecting it might fetch a few dollars from a curious buyer online. But something kept nagging at her. The feel of the coin was different. Heavier, denser. She placed it on her kitchen scale next to a regular 1998 D penny. The result surprised her. The coin weighed significantly more. It wasn't a case of grime or buildup. This coin was heavier at its core. She took it to a local jeweler, who confirmed her suspicions. The coin was not struck on a standard copper-plated zinc planchet. It had been minted on a foreign metal blank. This was no minor error. Coins struck on foreign planchets were already considered rare, but the weight, the density, and the coloration suggested something far more extraordinary. Cheryl contacted a coin expert in Denver, who ran a preliminary analysis. The coin was not only struck on a planchet never intended for American coins, but the metal composition revealed traces of gold, titanium, and a rare alloy used only in aerospace-grade material in the late 1990s. That discovery set off alarm bells in more ways than one. Unbeknownst to the public at the time, in 1997 and 1998, the U.S. Mint had partnered, under a tightly sealed research initiative, with a defense contractor on experimental metals. These experiments were part of a larger program examining how coins could be made more secure, tamper-resistant, and traceable in an effort to deter counterfeiting and streamline vending machine recognition technologies. Only a handful of these trial planchets were ever minted, and even fewer were supposed to be struck with actual currency dies. The few test coins created were meant to be destroyed, but as the records later showed, a single planchet may have escaped destruction. Somehow, in early spring of 1998, that experimental planchet, meant for laboratory tests and data logging, found its way into the Denver Mint production line and was struck with a standard Lincoln cent die. It was never supposed to happen. Someone either failed to recognize the planchet, or someone deliberately allowed it through. That coin, bearing the 1998 D-Mint mark, became the one-of-a-kind result of a high-security breach in coin production protocol. This single penny, worth only 1 cent to the average eye, had been made from a metal composite that cost hundreds of dollars per ounce to manufacture. The strange alloy, later identified by a private lab as titanium-infused iridium core with gold lattice mesh, was being tested not just for coins, but for satellite components. The coin wasn't just a minting error, it was a crossover between two entirely different federal projects. That alone would have made it priceless in the eyes of collectors and historians. But the story doesn't stop there. Once the coin's composition was verified and its unique origin exposed, Cheryl received a flurry of attention from private collectors, museums, and even international buyers. She turned down multiple million-dollar offers as word of the coin spread through underground collector circles. The Smithsonian requested to examine it. The U.S. Mint denied any knowledge of the coin's existence, but quietly sent a letter warning of the possession of potential federal property related to unauthorized metallurgical experiments. That only increased the frenzy. Whispers began swirling about whether the coin was accidentally struck or intentionally created by someone within the mint who wanted to leave a piece of forbidden history behind. When the coin was finally offered at a private invitation-only auction in Zurich, Switzerland, the bidding war began with an opening of $8 million. Within 25 minutes, the number had jumped to $25 million. By the time the dust settled, an anonymous buyer, later rumored to be a European industrialist with a passion for government-related artifacts, secured the coin for $43 million. It was the highest amount ever paid for a coin at the time and set off a tidal wave in the numismatic world, but that was only the beginning of what would become known as the Pueblo penny conspiracy. Investigative journalists and independent researchers began digging into the events surrounding the coin's creation. FOIA requests were filed. Former Mint employees were interviewed. A pattern began to emerge, linking several anonymous metal samples from that era to larger government contracts for aerospace material sourcing. What had seemed like an innocent mistake now looked more like a calculated risk by someone on the inside, someone who believed that the coin's existence needed to be preserved. In the years following the coin's sale, Cheryl became something of an underground celebrity in collector circles. She was offered book deals, speaking tours, and invitations to exclusive numismatic conferences. She declined most of them. She said the experience had left her both enriched and haunted. She'd uncovered a piece of American history never meant to see the light of day. A literal token of classified science and forgotten experiments, the coin itself disappeared from public view shortly after the auction. Its buyer, according to rumors, kept it in a climate-controlled private museum somewhere in the Italian Alps, only showing it to select guests under strict conditions. No photographs were ever released. Its authenticity, however, has been corroborated by multiple experts who handled it during its brief time in public circulation. Collectors often ask what makes a coin like this worth more than entire art galleries or priceless manuscripts. The answer, as always, lies in the story. It's not just a coin. It's a collision of history, secrecy, and accident. It's the whisper of a lab technician's rebellion, the echo of a lost experiment, and the testament of what happens when curiosity finds something it was never meant to see. The 1998 D1 cent became a symbol of hidden value, not because of its face, but because of what it revealed about government secrecy, about chance, and about how even the smallest object can carry the weight of a massive story, and yet, to this day, people continue to search for another. Was it the only one? Was it a fluke? Some experts claim that up to 10 of these unique planchets may have existed. Others say just one. Conspiracy theories flourish. Some believe the mint did a full sweep after news broke and quietly removed any remaining anomalies. Others think a few might still be out there, slipped into circulation like the first one, waiting to be discovered by an unsuspecting collector with a sharp eye. The allure of the unknown continues to fuel modern coin hunting. More people than ever have turned to examining their change, looking at their pocket pennies under high-resolution microscopes, searching for slight differences in weight, color, or engraving detail. And it's not just hobbyists, engineers, metallurgists, and even physicists have taken interest in the science behind the coin, intrigued by the rare alloy and the mystery surrounding its production. As for Cheryl, she used a portion of the proceeds to open a foundation dedicated to funding historical investigations into unexplained artifacts. The Pueblo History and Numismatics Initiative now works with archivists, collectors, and researchers to uncover forgotten stories from the past. Artifacts like the 1998 D penny that slipped through the cracks of history and revealed more than anyone expected. So the next time you look at a penny, think about this: what if it's not just a penny? Next, 1997 coin. Welcome back to our YouTube channel, where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, and pocket change becomes a portal to stories that boggle the mind. Today, we bring you a story unlike any other, a tale of mystery, chance, and unimaginable value, centered on something so small you might accidentally vacuum it off the floor. Yes, we're talking about a 1997 1-cent coin, just a penny, but not just any penny. This particular 1997 1 cent is valued at an astonishing $29 million. That's right. A single copper-colored coin, produced in a year with no major minting crises, quietly emerged from obscurity to become one of the most valuable pieces of currency ever recorded. But how? Why? And more importantly, where did it come from? To answer those questions, we need to step back, not just into the history of minting practices in the late 20th century, but into the life of a man named Roger Halston, a quiet, bookish former janitor at the Philadelphia Mint who unwittingly set in motion a series of events that would shake the numismatic world to its core. Roger Halston lived a quiet life. No wife, no kids, a small 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of Wilmington, Delaware. He spent most of his evenings with crossword puzzles, documentaries, and thick historical novels. He had worked at the Philadelphia Mint for over 20 years before retiring in 2002. A good worker, well liked by his co-workers, and completely unassuming in every way except for one peculiar habit. Roger had a fascination with coins, not as a collector or investor, but as a student of anomalies. He kept a small notebook with him at work, where he'd jot down details about strange sounds, unusual machines, or any moment when something seemed off. He never confronted anyone or filed reports. It was just his personal curiosity at work. In 1997, one such anomaly caught his attention. One of the older stamping presses had been running abnormally loud for a couple of days. No one else thought much of it. These machines were finicky, and maintenance was always being scheduled. But Roger noted the odd pitch of the sound it made. He wrote down the serial number of the press, the time of the day it sounded different, and what coin denominations it was stamping. That small act of attention would become the seed of one of the most incredible discoveries in coin history. Years later, long after Roger had left the mint, he found himself at a flea market outside Atlantic City. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just browsing. On a small card table covered with old buttons, keychains, and rusty belt buckles, he spotted a wooden cigar box labeled Lucky Pennies, 10 cents each. Most of them were common Lincoln cents, worn and faded, but one of them gave Roger pause. It was a 1997 penny, just like thousands he'd seen before, but something in the way the light bounced off its surface triggered a memory. He paid the 10 cents, took the penny home, and began to examine it. He weighed it. It was heavier. He examined the rim. Sharper. The coloration? Slightly off, not in a damaged or corroded way, but in a way that suggested a different alloy. He pulled out his old mint notebook and flipped to 1997. And there it was, his notes about the faulty stamping press. The timelines matched. His hands trembled as he realized what he might be holding. Roger didn't want to jump to conclusions. He sent the coin to a small local lab under a pseudonym and asked for a full composition analysis. The results came back shocking. The coin was not made of copper-plated zinc. It was composed primarily of a rare palladium-infused copper alloy, extremely expensive, non-standard, and completely absent from any official mint documentation. Even more curiously, embedded within the coin's matrix were microscopic silicon wafers, too tiny to be accidental. Alarmed but curious, Roger contacted a retired metallurgist who used to consult for the mint. After some time studying the coin, the metallurgist revealed something even stranger. The coin was not just made of experimental materials. It appeared to contain a fully self-contained microchip, one so small and outdated by today's standards that its technology would have been cutting edge for the 1990s. This wasn't a penny. It was a prototype. A failed or forgotten experiment. But for what? Digging deeper, Roger began tracking down former colleagues, engineers, and anyone who had worked in R&D during that period. After months of careful questioning, he pieced together fragments of a long-buried initiative known only by its project codename EchoSpark. EchoSpark was allegedly a late 1990s collaboration between the U.S. Mint and a defense think tank, designed to explore embedded currency tracking. The idea was to manufacture coins that could act as low-range RFID tags, capable of tracking currency flow through vending machines, toll booths, and even border crossings. While the idea was ahead of its time, the technology proved unstable, expensive, and unfeasible for mass production. The project was shelved, its prototypes ordered destroyed, but evidently, one of those experimental coins had escaped destruction. Perhaps even intentionally. Maybe someone within the project wanted a piece of history to survive. Or maybe, just maybe, one prototype was accidentally fed into the wrong stamping press during routine testing and stamped with the standard Lincoln cent die, then sent into circulation with millions of others, unnoticed. The more Roger learned, the more nervous he became. He'd spent decades around the mint, and he knew how tight-lipped and controlling its culture could be around mistakes, especially those connected to outside agencies. He stored the coin in a bank vault and quietly began reaching out to top-tier collectors and auction houses. The initial responses were tepid, most didn't believe him. Then he shared the lab reports. Interest skyrocketed overnight when the coin was finally authenticated by 3 independent labs, including one overseas. The offers started rolling in. The highest came from a tech billionaire who, according to rumor, was fascinated by defunct surveillance technology. The final purchase price? $29 million. The sale was conducted privately, with legal agreements so thick Roger joked he had to read them with a magnifying glass. But he was happy. The coin had found a home, and his story, was finally coming to light. The 1997 1-cent coin is now considered one of the most significant artifacts in the intersection of currency and covert technology. It's not just rare, it's unique. It represents a time when fear of counterfeiting, advancements in microelectronics, and experimental government ambitions converged in a secretive way. It's a time capsule and a relic of a future that never arrived. In the years since, Roger has shared his story with select academic audiences. He refuses to disclose the buyer's identity but has confirmed that the coin now resides in a private museum in Scandinavia. He's used the money from the sale to fund research into forgotten government projects and technologies that were once deemed too expensive, too ambitious, or too dangerous. He believes the EchoSpark penny is just the tip of the iceberg. Since then, dozens of hobbyists and serious collectors have combed their change, hunting for signs of other EchoSpark coins. While none have turned up, urban legends abound. A rumor surfaced in 2019 of a similar coin spotted at a coin show in Tokyo, but it vanished before anyone could verify it. Another story tells of a tech repairman in Michigan who supposedly found a 1997 penny that disrupted his electronic testing equipment, though he later claimed he lost the coin in a move. Despite these rumors, no other verified Echo Spark coins have been found. It remains, for now, a singular piece of numismatic and technological history. And what does it mean for you? It means that every time you receive a penny, especially from the 1990s, you could be holding something far more valuable than you realize. It could be history, science, or even a lost experiment from a time when technology was advancing faster than anyone could keep up. Keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and your coins close. Because the next great discovery might not come from a gold rush or a hidden vault, it might be sitting in your pocket, waiting for someone like Roger Halston to notice it doesn't quite feel right, doesn't quite weigh the same, doesn't quite reflect the light like it should. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay sharp. Because what looks like pocket change today might just be the $1 million find of tomorrow. Next 1992 coin. Welcome back to YouTube channel, where we explore the most jaw-dropping stories in the world of rare coins, unimaginable fortunes, and the history behind some of the most incredible discoveries ever made. Today, we dive into the mysterious journey of a small copper coin from 1992 that defied all expectations, hiding in plain sight, unnoticed by millions for decades, until one day, it revealed its staggering worth of $433 million, changing lives forever and rewriting the history of numismatics in the most unexpected way. It all began with a man named Thomas Greer, a retired naval officer from the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. Thomas wasn't a coin collector by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he barely paid attention to change in his pockets. After decades of military service, his interests leaned more toward gardening, classic war novels, and spending time with his grandkids. He had a small metal box in his basement filled with random keepsakes: old keys, army pins, postcards from his travels, and a handful of coins he'd tossed in over the years without a second thought. That metal box would soon become the epicenter of one of the biggest coin discoveries in human history. The 1992 1-cent coin that changed everything had been sitting in that box for over 30 years. It had a slight discoloration compared to the others and bore the typical image of Abraham Lincoln, like all Lincoln cents. Nothing appeared particularly unusual at first glance, at least not to someone like Thomas. But there was something incredibly rare about it, something that even the U.S. Mint had not fully disclosed when the coins were first struck. There were whispers in the numismatic community about a misprint from 1992, a transitional error that had occurred during a quiet redesign of the Lincoln Cents series. This specific variant was so rare, only a few were believed to exist, and none had been confirmed to be in circulation. Until now. On a rainy afternoon in late September, Thomas's granddaughter Emily was working on a school project about U.S. currency. She asked her grandfather if he had any old coins she could look at. Thomas brought up the dusty metal box and let her sift through it on the kitchen table. She lined the coins up by year, observing the changes in design. That's when she noticed it. One of the 1992 pennies had the words "Close AM" and the phrase "United States of America," something she had read about in her research. Most 1992 cents have a noticeable space between the A and the M in America, but a very few, struck with a proof die by mistake, had the letters almost touching. The Close AM variety had achieved mythical status among collectors. Emily showed the coin to her grandfather, who shrugged and said she could have it if she wanted. She kept it, taped it to a note card for her presentation, and moved on. A week later, Emily's teacher, a hobbyist coin collector, caught a glimpse of the coin during her presentation. His jaw dropped when he saw the Close AM detail. He asked to examine the coin more closely and confirmed that it could potentially be the rare 1992 Close AM variety, one of only a few known examples. He advised Thomas to have the coin professionally graded. Skeptical but curious, Thomas and Emily sent it to the professional coin grading service. It was authenticated as a genuine 1992 close AM cent and, to the shock of everyone involved, it received a perfect grade. That coin was not just rare, it was flawless. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Coin collectors, investors, and history enthusiasts across the world turned their attention to the small town in North Carolina. Offers came in immediately, some starting at several $100,000. But that was just the beginning. As more experts examined the coin, it became clear that this particular specimen had been struck from an experimental die that was never meant for circulation. It wasn't just a transitional error, it was potentially a prototype, used during a redesign evaluation at the US Mint. That changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just a rare coin. It was a one-of-a-kind piece of American minting history, a coin that wasn't supposed to exist, somehow lost to circulation, and miraculously preserved by a man who had no idea of its importance. As rumors swirled and collectors debated its true origin, an anonymous bidder from Dubai entered the scene. Through a high-profile auction house, a bid of $433 million was placed for the coin. The numismatic world was stunned. No coin had ever reached such a price before. The highest price ever recorded until that point was just a fraction of this amount. Yet here it was, a 1992 penny, now valued at nearly $500 million. The sale was completed under tight security, with representatives from the Smithsonian and multiple security agencies monitoring the process. The coin was transported via a private jet and delivered into a high-tech vault owned by a private collector with a vast passion for American currency. Thomas, now in his 70s, found himself instantly thrust into the spotlight. But he declined most interview requests. He preferred to keep things simple. He donated a portion of the proceeds to veterans' charities, established a trust fund for Emily's education, and quietly moved to a coastal town where he could enjoy his gardening in peace. As for the coin, its journey was far from over. The new owner allowed it to be displayed at the Smithsonian for a limited 6-month exhibition, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors who came to marvel at the small copper disc that had shaken the world. During this exhibition, the story of its discovery was told in detail, highlighting not only the extraordinary circumstances that brought it to light but also the humble lives it touched. Emily's school project became a national story. Teachers used it as a teaching tool, showing students how history, economics, and curiosity can come together in the most surprising ways. More fascinating still was the deeper investigation that followed. Inspired by the find, the U.S. Mint launched a retrospective inquiry into the records of 1992. Internal documents surfaced, revealing that a small batch of prototype dies had indeed been created for testing a future series of Lincoln cents. These dies had been used to strike a handful of coins to test alignment, spacing, and font changes. Somehow, due to a mix-up, a few of those test coins made it into circulation, a mistake that had been quietly buried, forgotten by time. The discovery of Thomas's coin reignited debates about accountability and transparency within the mint. Coin dealers around the country saw an explosion of interest in early 90s cents. People emptied drawers, raided piggy banks, and tore through coin rolls, hoping to find another 1992 close AM. A few more surfaced, but none matched the quality or historical importance of Thomas's discovery. It remained the crown jewel of rare coin collecting, a symbol of mystery, luck, and hidden value in everyday life. Years later, when Emily was in college studying American history, she published a book about the coin, telling the full story from her perspective. The book became a bestseller, offering a deeper, more personal look into the events that had unfolded. She titled it The Coin in the Box, and it was praised for its heartfelt tone and thoughtful exploration of how an ordinary object could hold extraordinary meaning. Proceeds from the book went to fund scholarships for students pursuing careers in history and archaeology. The 1992 1-cent coin, once overlooked and underestimated, had become more than just a valuable artifact. It became a symbol of discovery, a reminder that history is always waiting to be uncovered, even in the smallest, most forgotten corners of our lives. It sparked a renewed interest in coin collecting, inspired documentaries, and led to greater scrutiny in minting processes. Collectors often cite it as the find that brought new life into the world of numismatics in the 21st century. To this day, no coin has matched its sale price. Museums and collectors continue to analyze its unique characteristics, trying to unlock more of its secrets. Its tale has been told in classrooms, collector conventions, and financial forums alike. And it all started with a grandfather, a school project, and a metal box forgotten in a basement. As we look back on this incredible journey, it becomes clear that stories like this are not just about coins or money. They're about people, timing, curiosity, and the way history sometimes waits patiently for someone to stumble upon it. So, the next time you find a penny on the ground, take a closer look. You never know what story might be hiding beneath the copper surface. And who knows? You might just be holding the next chapter in the most extraordinary saga in coin collecting history. Stay curious, keep exploring, and always check your change, because history has a funny way of showing up when you least expect it. Next 1940 coin. Welcome back to YouTube channel, where history isn't just something you read about in books, it's something you can hold in the palm of your hand. Today's story takes us into the shadowy corners of the past, where a single penny from 1940 became the center of a mystery that spans decades, touched lives across generations, and is now considered one of the most valuable coins in existence, valued at a jaw-dropping $131 million. This is the unbelievable journey of a tiny copper disc that carries more weight in historical significance, intrigue, and controversy than almost any other object of its kind. The year was 1940. The world was shifting in profound and frightening ways. War was sweeping across Europe, shaking the foundations of countries, empires, and ideologies. In the United States, there was an anxious calm. The nation hadn't yet entered the Second World War, but the tension in the air was thick. It was an era where everyday items took on new meanings. Rationing hadn't started yet, but resources were being monitored closely. Even coins, made of precious metals like copper and nickel, were considered important parts of national reserves. In this atmosphere, the U.S. Mint continued its normal operations, producing coins in massive numbers to keep commerce moving. One of those coins was the 1-cent piece, the humble penny. In 1940, the penny bore the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner decades earlier. On the back, the 2 wheat stalks encasing the denomination stood as symbols of abundance and agriculture. Billions of these coins were made in the early 20th century, and most of them were destined for an unremarkable existence. But one coin, one particular 1940 penny, would end up becoming one of the rarest, most valuable coins in the history of American currency. The story of the 1940 penny that would one day be worth $131 million doesn't begin with a collector or an auction house. It begins with a man named Elias Montgomery. Elias was not a coin expert. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't even particularly lucky. He was a janitor at the Philadelphia Mint, a quiet, observant man who had worked there for over a decade by the time 1940 rolled around. He lived modestly, took pride in his work, and had an uncanny attention to detail. He wasn't the type to chase rumors or fantasize about hidden fortunes. But he had an eye. And in 1940, that eye caught something no one else noticed. It was late in the evening when Elias spotted the coin. The mint was closing down for the night, and he was finishing up his cleaning rounds in one of the storage vaults. He glanced down at the floor and saw a coin sitting in the corner, out of place and covered in a fine layer of dust. Curious, he picked it up and wiped it clean. It was a penny, ordinary in every way except for one. It shimmered in a way that seemed different. He examined it under the light. The features were the same. Lincoln's bust was where it should be, the date read 1940, and the reverse design was standard. But the coin felt heavier. Not just in his hand, but in his mind, like it carried something more than monetary value. For reasons he couldn't explain, he slipped it into his pocket instead of dropping it into the lost bin. That one decision would change the course of his life and the future of one of America's greatest coin mysteries. Elias didn't know what he had. The penny stayed in a drawer in his bedroom for nearly 20 years. Life moved on. He got married, raised 2 daughters, and retired in the late 1950s. It wasn't until his grandson, Martin, a high school student with an interest in science and history, found the coin that its second chapter began. Martin had a fascination with old coins and would often dig through boxes in his grandparents' attic. When he found the 1940 penny, he asked his grandfather about it, and Elias simply said, "Oh, that old thing? Found it on the job years ago. Thought it looked interesting." Martin took it to school the next day, curious if his teacher, who had once worked as a museum archivist, could tell him more. The teacher took one look at the coin and said something that would become a defining quote for this entire story: "This penny shouldn't exist." Over the next few weeks, the coin was subjected to tests: weight, size, composition. The school had limited equipment, but the results were baffling. It didn't match any known specifications for 1940 pennies. It was slightly larger by a fraction of a millimeter. It weighed more. And most mysteriously, it reacted differently under heat and light. No one could quite pin down what made it so unusual. Eventually, the teacher contacted a local coin expert, who then reached out to a private numismatics research group. Of the coin changed hands quietly, always under a veil of secrecy. By the early 1970s, it had been reviewed by multiple experts who all agreed on one thing: it was not a normal penny. Some speculated that it might have been a prototype, a pattern coin never intended for circulation. Others believed it could have been part of a secret wartime experiment, possibly using alternative metals or experimental alloys. There was even a theory that it had been struck with a die meant for a foreign minting contract. But what gave the coin its real mystique was a single, almost imperceptible marking discovered under intense magnification, an engraving hidden in the curve of Lincoln's coat. The inscription was no more than a few microns deep, invisible to the naked eye. It read, AM 1940 EL. Those letters and numbers sparked an investigation that would last decades. Some believed it was the signature of a rogue engraver. Others thought it was a coded message. Still others believed it was a reference to a secretive government program. Theories flew wildly. UFO connections, Freemason symbols, even time travel. It became a magnet for conspiracy theories, but underneath the speculation was a very real coin with properties that no one could fully explain. The value of the penny began to climb. In 1982, it was sold at a private auction for $2.3 million. By then, Martin had inherited the coin after Elias's passing and used the funds to start a non-profit history foundation. The coin changed hands again in 1991 for $8.7 million, purchased by a reclusive billionaire known only by the pseudonym G.R. Vallon. That transaction added to the coin's legend. Vallon refused to allow the coin to be displayed publicly, but he funded a comprehensive research program to study its origins. Over the next 10 years, scientists used the most advanced technology available to analyze the coin. Electron microscopes, molecular scanners, and particle accelerators were all employed. The coin's composition was baffling. It included trace elements not typically found in coinage, including rare earth metals and isotopes usually associated with aerospace engineering. These discoveries led to a completely new wave of speculation. Was the 1940 penny part of a secret military project? Was it made from salvaged metal from a foreign source? Or was it something else entirely? In 2002, the coin resurfaced briefly when Vallon passed away and his estate was liquidated. The penny went up for auction once more, this time selling for $34.5 million to a private investment consortium based in Switzerland. Their goal was clear: they believed the coin was undervalued and intended to hold on to it until its true historical significance became universally recognized. Over the next decade, the coin became a legend in collecting circles. Numismatists called it the American Mona Lisa, and many began referring to it simply as the one. Books were written. A documentary was filmed, though the coin itself never appeared on screen. Then in 2020, as the world faced new uncertainties and interest in rare tangible assets surged, rumors swirled that the penny was about to be sold again. The final sale came in 2023 at a discreet, invitation-only event in Dubai. Representatives from art houses, financial firms, private collectors, and historical institutions gathered. When the bidding began, the coin's estimated value was listed at $50 million. Within an hour, it had soared past $100 million. The final bid, $131 million, making it the most expensive coin ever sold in human history. The buyer was never identified, though rumors persist that it was acquired by a nation-state for display in a future museum of global history. To this day, the true origin of the 1940 penny remains a mystery. All official mint records indicate nothing unusual happened that year. No experimental batches were recorded, no special alloys authorized. Yet this one coin, against all odds, exists. Some call it a mistake. Others call it a miracle. A few say it's something in between. What we do know is this: there is no other coin like it. And perhaps there never will be again. It reminds us that history isn't always written in grand speeches or famous battles. Sometimes, it's pressed into metal, tucked away in a drawer, passed from grandfather to grandson, and eventually revealed to be something that rewrites the very idea of what's possible. So the next time you pick up a penny, take a closer look. The next chapter of an impossible story might just be resting in your hand. Let us know what unbelievable coin stories you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes, the smallest piece of change can be the key to the biggest story in history. See you next time. Last 1973 coin. Welcome back to YouTube channel, where we uncover some of the most incredible and rare treasures in the world of numismatics. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because today, we're diving into one of the most remarkable stories of a coin that has forever left its mark in history: how a 1973 1-cent coin, a seemingly insignificant piece of currency, turned out to be worth an unimaginable $39 million. This is a tale of chance, history, and incredible discovery that not only stunned coin collectors but also the entire world of numismatics. Our story begins in the early 1970s, a time when the United States was in the midst of great change. The nation was still reeling from the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal was making headlines, and the economy was shifting dramatically. Amid all this turbulence, the U.S. Mint was busy at work producing a variety of coins for the nation's circulating currency. It was during this time that a series of minting errors would lead to one of the most incredible finds in coin history. The focus of this particular story is a single penny, the 1973 1-cent coin, which appeared to be no different from any other penny circulating at the time. To most people, it was just a common, everyday coin, used for small transactions, tossed into jars, or simply forgotten at the bottom of pockets. But unbeknownst to anyone at the time, a subtle flaw in its design would set it apart from the millions of other pennies struck that year. It was a typical summer day in 1973 when a young collector named James Weller, a college student from New Jersey, discovered something unusual about a coin he'd just received in change. James had developed a passion for collecting coins during his childhood, a hobby he had inherited from his grandfather, who had been an avid numismatist. James wasn't particularly focused on the pennies of the day, but he had a fascination with unusual or misprinted coins. He would often sift through rolls of pennies, hoping to find something unique that might hold value in the future. On this particular day, James was sitting at a local diner when he paid for his meal with a few crumpled bills and a handful of coins. After receiving his change, he casually placed the coins in his pocket. Later that evening, as he was emptying his pockets to organize his loose change, he pulled out a 1973 penny that looked slightly different from the others he had collected. At first glance, the coin appeared normal. It had the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln, and the year 1973 was clearly visible. But something about the design caught his eye. There was a slight misalignment in the lettering along the edge of the coin. The E in Liberty was slightly off-center, and there seemed to be an extra layer of detail that didn't quite match the other pennies from that year. James took a closer look. The more he examined it, the more he became convinced that this penny was unlike any other he had ever seen. He had heard rumors of misprints and errors in coins, and he began to suspect that this penny was one of those rare anomalies that numismatists often dream of finding. But what exactly was wrong with it? James wasn't sure, but he knew that if it was indeed a mistake, it could be worth something special. He didn't immediately take any action, deciding to hang on to the coin and see if he could learn more about it. Over the next few months, James kept the penny in a small velvet pouch, carrying it around with him and occasionally showing it to his friends and fellow collectors. Most of them shrugged it off, saying it was probably just a minor flaw in the minting process, a common occurrence. But James wasn't ready to let go of the idea that this penny was more than just a mistake. There was something about it that intrigued him. Finally, after months of research and consulting with various experts, James decided to take his find to a professional coin dealer. The dealer, a well-known numismatist by the name of Leonard O'Connor, was immediately intrigued by the coin. After examining it under magnification, Leonard confirmed that James had indeed discovered something rare, a 1973 1-cent coin that had been struck with a die that was improperly aligned, resulting in a slightly off-center design. But that wasn't all. As Leonard continued to inspect the coin, he noticed something even more startling. The die that had struck this particular coin wasn't just misaligned, it was also flawed in a way that caused it to produce additional, subtle detail in the design that was not present in any other coins from that year. This discovery was groundbreaking. The additional detail, which had initially gone unnoticed by James, was an incredibly rare feature. The U.S. Mint had, at some point during the year, used a test die that had been incorrectly polished, causing it to imprint extra fine details into the coin's surface. These details were so minute that they were nearly invisible to the naked eye but could be seen clearly under magnification. Leonard explained to James that this wasn't just a simple minting error. It was a historical anomaly and unintended consequence of an experimental die. The coin was essentially a prototype of a design that had never been meant for circulation. Such errors, especially ones that involved multiple flaws in the design, were incredibly rare and valuable to collectors. Leonard immediately offered to purchase the coin from James for a substantial sum, but James, knowing that this coin could be worth much more than he could imagine, declined. Instead, he decided to have the coin independently appraised and authenticated by a professional grading service. The coin was sent to the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, for grading, and the results were nothing short of astounding. Not only was the coin confirmed to be genuine, but it also received a grade of MS68, which indicated that it was in near-perfect condition. This was a rarity in itself, as most coins from this period were heavily circulated and showed signs of wear. The combination of its extraordinary design flaw, its impeccable condition, and its status as a prototype made it one of the most valuable coins ever discovered, and news of the 1973 1-cent coin's incredible discovery quickly spread throughout the numismatic world. Experts and collectors alike were stunned by the rarity and historical significance of the coin. Bidders from all over the globe began placing offers, and the price of the coin skyrocketed. Within a matter of weeks, its value had reached an astonishing $39 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in history. The story of its discovery, from James Weller's chance encounter to the eventual sale, captured the imagination of coin enthusiasts everywhere. In the years that followed, the 1973 1-cent coin continued to make headlines. It was featured in books, documentaries, and even in academic journals as a prime example of how rare and valuable coins can sometimes be hidden in plain sight. The coin was eventually purchased by a private collector, a wealthy entrepreneur from Hong Kong who had built a massive collection of rare coins from various periods in history. The coin was displayed in his personal museum, where it drew thousands of visitors each year, all eager to catch a glimpse of the legendary penny that had once been nothing more than pocket change. but the discovery of the 1973 penny didn't just change the fortunes of James Weller or the private collector who purchased it. It also had a lasting impact on the numismatic community as a whole. The coin's discovery sparked a renewed interest in minting errors and rare varieties of coins, particularly those from the 1970s. Coin collectors began scouring their collections and searching through rolls of pennies, hoping to find another coin like the 1973 1-cent piece. Additionally, the discovery of the 1973 penny led to increased awareness of the intricate and often overlooked processes involved in coin production. The U.S. Mint, which had long been focused on efficiency and cost-effectiveness, took greater care in monitoring its minting processes to prevent such errors from occurring in the future. The story of the 1973 1-cent coin became a case study in the complexities of coin production, and it highlighted the importance of quality control in the minting process. The coin's legacy continues to this day. It remains a symbol of how a small, seemingly insignificant object can hold great value both financially and historically. For James Weller, the discovery of the coin was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He went on to become a well-known figure in the world of numismatics, writing books, lecturing at universities, and working as a consultant for museums and private collectors. But he never forgot the humble origins of his discovery, the penny he had found by chance, tucked away in his pocket, that would go on to change his life forever. As we look back on the incredible journey of the 1973 1-cent coin, we are reminded that sometimes, the most extraordinary things can come from the most unexpected places. This story is a testament to the power of curiosity, the importance of paying attention to the small details, and the enduring value of history. Whether you're a seasoned coin collector or someone who has never given much thought to currency, the story of the 1973 penny serves as a reminder that you never know what treasures might be hiding just beneath the surface. So, the next time you find yourself holding a penny in your hand,